So, what is the most specific thing that comes up over and over and over again? And you've seen yesterday in all the lessons we did, it came up many, many times. And that is that oftentimes people have a difficult time playing one note well. They can play thousands of notes well, but playing one note well is a problem. And this is particularly true when players have technical skills that are good, but when it comes down to something like vibrato or phrasing, as you know, was a recurring issue that came up, not with everybody, but with a lot of people. That's holding back all of those technical, achievements that you've made, or music theory knowledge achievements that you made, or the fact that you developed a good ear over time, or you have a good sense of rhythm over time. It's making all those things almost irrelevant, or at least severely holding them back. I have this picture in my mind of an upward spiral. And at the base of that spiral is the ability to play one pitch, one note, really, really well. I don't mean, just to clarify, I don't mean that you play one note and it's perfectly clean and you can hear it and it's articulated well. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, can you make that note sing? Does that note sound like your favorite singer singing that note? If the answer is yes, then you can play one note very well. If you can't play a note to sound like your favorite singer, then you can't play one note well, yet. This is, it might seem trivial that we're talking about playing one note, but it's actually, it couldn't be more significant. If you can learn to play one note amazingly well, I bet it's pretty easy to play two notes amazingly well. And if you can play two, playing three won't be any harder. And if you can play three notes amazingly well, you can play 1,000 notes amazingly well. But if you can't play one note amazingly well, forget about playing two notes or 200 notes or 2,000 notes. What I want you to do is play these two strings open. Okay? So these two strings open is implying a G chord, or G power chord, okay? And I want you to do this. Right. Now after that, I want you to improvise one note, one lead guitar note after that. Okay, so it might sound something like this. Just any note on the guitar. Good, that was nice. Again, with another pitch. Good, more. Continue. Continue, keep going. Okay, let's do a couple more. Go ahead.
The same note or?
Yeah, same pitch,
Okay.
but articulate it or make it sound different, but still good. Okay, now let's stick with, I want you to play one note, and then the second note can be different. So. So make variations on one note. We're going to play two notes, but you're going to keep the first note the same.
Okay.
okay?
Something like this or?
Well, two notes. You can do this. That's note one. That's note two. Next time. Note one. Note two. Note one.
The first one should ring.
Not necessarily. Could be that. This upward spiral is how I'd like you to spend, and all of you to spend, some of your time, some of your practice time working on. Not all of your practice time, but some, and I'll talk a little bit about how much later. But it's really, really important to have the basic skill that you have of being able to play one note and making that one note sound good. Okay? Once you get to that point, then we need to start working on what you need to work on a little bit more, which is getting two notes to sound good while keeping the first note the same. Okay? Once that skill is developed further, then work on two notes, but those two notes could be anything. You can change those two notes. All right? But see, the reason why I wanted you to keep the first note the same is because I was testing your ability to come up with variations and phrasing options on the spot. If I allowed you to continue to change the first note, you play two notes but they're both different, then because you're using different pitches, it makes it much easier to find or discover phrasing options, because maybe you're going to take two notes from some other lick that you know or other phrase that you know, or you're using the fact that there is a different pitch to help make the phrase more interesting. Okay? When you restrict yourself down to having the first note the same and only alter the second note, you quickly run out of options. I mean, you start thinking, well, what else is there to do? Well, there's tons of stuff to do, but for whatever reason, those ideas either aren't coming into your mind fast enough or you're not able to execute them well enough, one or the other or both. Okay, so that's going to be an important step for you. Okay, after this point, the next thing would be to take on three notes. Okay, leaving the first two the same and only changing the last note. Okay, then you do it again. As you develop that skill, you make only the first note the same, and you can change the second two. After that starts to get more comfortable, then you can change all three notes. The other reason why we start with only playing on one note is, as I mentioned in somebody's lesson yesterday, when you're trying to develop your phrasing and play with good phrasing, in the beginning when you're working on it, the two most important things you need to think about are the first note and the last note. What happens in the middle is less important when you're first developing your phrasing. Because the first and the last note are what people are going to remember the most, and they're usually the notes that are being sustained and are being judged against the chord which is being played underneath. Okay? So if you're going to end this phrase, you can play a bunch of notes, you're going to end the phrase on a specific pitch, it's so much more important that that last note sounds good than any of the notes that came before or in the middle. Okay? So working on one note here will help you vastly in many other areas.